Welcome to another exciting episode of Bats, Balls and Banter, your ultimate destination for all things cricket. Cricket is more than just a game, it's a passion that unites millions across the globe. Here at Bats, Balls and Banter, we're dedicated to bringing you closer to the action, the stories and the personalities that make cricket the fascinating sport that it is. I'm your host, Kevin Pattenden. Grab your bat, hold on to your balls, settle in, and let's dive into the banter. On today's episode, we have an incredibly special guest, my brother Alan. Alan has not only played both football and cricket at a county level, but also pursued a career in mental health, where he's been open about his own personal journey. Today we're diving into some powerful topics like choosing cricket over football, the impact of losing our brother Paul, and how cricket has played a role in his life as both an outlet and a form of therapy. We'll hear from Alan on how he made the big decision to stick with cricket, what his funniest moments on the field have been, and how his take on how mental health is treated in sports. He'll also share how he overcame some of his biggest personal challenges and offer advice to young cricketers on managing their mental health while chasing their dreams. Hey, this conversation promises to be heartfelt, inspiring and filled with plenty of banter, so stay tuned. So welcome Alan to Bats, Balls and Banter.
Hello, Kev. You all right?
Yeah, good, mate. Good to have you. And
very good.
I think there's going to be lots of questions that we get through today. We're not quite sure if we'll get them all in, but let's see how it goes. And we're going to start really with a strange question to start with, because obviously as brothers, as we are, then I know quite a lot of background and history with yourself, and I know that you played both cricket and football at county schoolboys level, but I suppose the question for me is, and I never really knew at the time, is what made you choose cricket in the end? Was there a moment that sealed the deal for you?
I think ultimately it came down to a combination of passion and opportunity. So back in the heady days of 1976, I passed the national exam called the 11 Plus. This meant I went to a boys only school with pupils who were in a top percentage education-wise. And it was Retford Grammar School, and that gave me the opportunity really to play so much sport. I remember the first time I was exposed to badminton, squash, rugby and cricket and football, obviously on a very regular occurrence. There was a chance for athletics, but as you well know, and anybody who knows me, I wasn't necessarily built to be an athlete.
No, we are similar on that.
We are.
I don't think we're ever going to be either long distance runners or 100-metre sprinters.
No, we didn't fall into that category, mate. So really, I equally love football and cricket at the same time. Playing in the school first 11 in both sports meant I was playing just about every weekend throughout the year. And I guess you have to remember that back in the day, this was when schools had their own sports fields and teachers who gave up their time over and above the basic hours to give us the opportunity to play. And sport really was a staple of the curriculum, particularly at grammar schools. I do know how times have changed, but that's probably a podcast in its own right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't. There was a couple of questions went through my head there as we were talking, but maybe this is not the the podcast for that. As to how times have changed since 1976, and I'm, what will I be? 4 years younger than you. So even 4 years later, when I went to secondary school, it had started to disappear. The teachers putting in that commitment. I remember for me it was, if you remember, was more rugby and cricket.
Definitely,
I remember on a Saturday morning we'd meet outside the school and the bus would take us to Kesteven or wherever, just the local place we'd play, and the teacher would be there. And but that got less and less in my time, and now I don't think it even happens at all. But
I think back in the day, back then, there was a prerequisite for all the teachers to have a sports qualification as well. If I remember rightly, they weren't just biology teachers or Latin teachers, as it was. They all had a sports qualification,
along with their chosen subject. If I remember rightly, your cricket master, would they be called? They wouldn't probably even have been called a teacher in them days. But your cricket master, I'm trying to recall his name, but didn't he play at Retford as well?
Would that be Dave Walters, Bob Winfield? Fred Self, just slightly before me, but Fred Self was an absolute excellent wicket-keeper. And there are some people listening to this podcast, I'm sure, tonight, who did play with him. And what an excellent wicket-keeper he was. Just sort of finishing as I started playing, really.
Okay. I remembered the name. I mean, I think when I went to so you went to King Edward VI Grammar School. Yeah. Then when I started, it just gone into that secondary school of sort of
comprehensive, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it was the same school, but it was called the Sir Frederick Milner, I think, if I recall.
Right. Yeah.
And Mr. Smith, I don't know if Mr. Smith was there in your day. As I say, I was 4 years
Tony.
later. But he was the big cricket push for me at school.
Yeah. And there was Simon Cox as well.
Simon Cox, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And Chris Stevens. Was the
Andy Massey from a rugby perspective. Every teacher had a very deep interest in sport, and I mean that helped. That obviously helped us.
And is that what made the decision for you then, as to sort of?
The thing was, obviously somebody must have picked up that I was, shall we say, half decent. So between 14 and 17, I was playing for the county. But the big problem was that we lived 25 miles north of Nottingham.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the coaching sessions were. And as Dad didn't finish work till about 5, it was really difficult to get to Nottingham for a 6 o'clock training session. So what really made me pick cricket over football was, and again, I don't know if you remember it, the Andrews Heat for Hire cricket coaching.
I do, yeah. Sports Centre.
That's right. So cricket coaching suddenly became available at Retford Sports Centre, and the coaching for Notts, county cricket clubs, some of it was at Retford Sports Centre.
Yeah, I do.
So there was no more rushing to Nottingham. I could walk there after school. So it simply really became so much easier to get to cricket than football. And so really from a county perspective, football went by the wayside.
So it probably wasn't necessarily a direct decision. It was more this is easier to get to, this is easier to be around, and therefore cricket took precedence over football
and that's right.
For family reasons, in the fact that, as you say, we had one car. I mean, can you imagine these days only having one car in a family? But we had one car, Dad worked shifts. If you felt lucky, you could go. I'm a similar scenario with Nets at Trent Bridge, as you rightly say, and we just lost our way a little bit on that because we couldn't always be there. But hey, that was it. It is what it is.
And the lads who were in Nottingham, it was just a trip across the city, and they were there. So really, like I say, it's passion and opportunity. The opportunity was right on my doorstep to play. Via the sports centre sessions. Yeah. So then I joined Retford Cricket Club around the same time, age 12. And right next to the cricket ground was the football club.
Yeah. Of which Dad was the groundsman.
He was. He spent
at the football ground, that is, at Retford Town. As it was.
Yeah, River Lane. River Lane, it was called. Yeah. So we spent a very high percentage of our time down at the football ground. Next door was the cricket ground. It just seemed a very logical thing for me to be play cricket at Retford. And I think a very, very high percentage of my early years were in the same postcode, really, playing sport. I think also my schoolmates were more cricket orientated than football. So cricket really it grew from there, really, and then I was soon in the junior team at Retford and made some lifelong friends. So really, I decided that cricket was where I wanted to focus my efforts. And then for years and years, I was at the ground netting or playing. And I have to say my schoolwork suffered, but I didn't seem at the time to be too bothered about that.
No, it didn't really worry when you was playing cricket six
exactly.
days a week and maybe seventh if you could have done.
Well,
Just
exactly.
to pick on a point, actually, though, Al, as we'll come on to later, no doubt, at some stage, Retford Cricket Club won't be known to majority of our listeners unless you are aware of its favourite son, which is the very said Derek Randall, and we'll come on to some Randall. Of that in a bit. But that was Derek's club, wasn't it? That's where Derek. It was
Derek's club, and that shaped. He really shaped. Not that I was any, even a very poor version of him, but it became. He played from Retford. He played at Retford. He came from Retford. He was a Retford lad, and some of the lads I was playing with, in Nigel Halls, because of the connection with Nigel's dad. Derek's name was just there and spoken about all the time. And then when you see him on the telly, and as you say, we no doubt will come to a couple of stories about him. But, 1 minute he's on the telly, the next minute he's 4 doors away from where we lived, or he's playing cricket down, coming down to Retford. So I think Derek shaped my love for the game as well, really.
Yeah, and as I say, I think we'll come on to Derek a little bit later, but we could talk for hours on some of these subjects, and this, let's see how it goes as to whether we get all these 7 or 8 questions in that I've got lined up for you. But so that was the decision made, I suppose, and that, I'm going to escalate quite a long way now, really, to your working environment, and it's really relevant because you work in a mental health arena, and you've been open about your own struggles on that issue. How's cricket helped you manage those challenges then over the years, if at all it has, or any other way of managing? We know it's more prevalent now than it ever was before. No, wrong. It's as prevalent now as it ever. We hear about it more now. I don't think it happens more. I think we just know about it more. But what are the challenges then? And how has cricket helped you over the years through that stage? Obviously, your current work at in the mental health arena.
I think that. When I start to think about this, cricket has played quite a significant role in managing my mental health, to be honest. I think it provided me a lot of structure. You were going and you were playing pretty much for most of the day, Saturdays and Sundays and Wednesdays, and netting on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and probably even sneaking down there on a Monday night as well if I could. And I guess the camaraderie and also a healthy outlet for emotions. I've always been big on playing sport as somewhere to channel frustrations, to be honest. So I think it sort of grounds you a little bit. And when you're concentrating on the game, it's alleviating stress, really, and any forms of anxiety. Because, you're in that team scenario and you're not there for you directly, you're there for your teammates, that connection and support with your colleagues, your teammates, and that's vital really for mental well-being. And then there's the odd moment of achievement, getting 100 or getting 5 wickets or a particularly good catch, and so there's the sense of really a sense of purpose to what you're doing, and
I think that's cricket is one of those things, isn't it? You're an individual, but you're in a team sport.
Absolutely.
So I think you can, probably get out for not many, or drop a catch, but you still got the chance to feel really good about it because the team has performed.
Yes.
I suppose if you're playing snooker, you miss a black and the next guy clears up, you're only self to blame. If you're playing darts and you miss treble 20, you're only yourself to blame. But in a game like cricket, which is very much a camaraderie game, which is 11 individuals fighting for each other, but whilst also fighting for themselves. If
yes,
that makes sense.
You're honing your individual skills and bringing to the team, whatever you can bring to the team. But it's the team that you're there for. I was there for the team, for the good of the team, And to this day, I'll do anything for the good of my team. And some of the mates, you so look forward. The fact that you were playing sport together with lads that you got on so well with was just put everything else to one side for those few hours. I think. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we're probably going to say the same thing. I think the modern day and age, and I really don't like living in a world of, in my day or back in the day. Things change. I have to change with it. I do change with it. So, please don't think I'm saying, back in the day. However, the way the world has gone for youngsters, I suppose, is there's much more available now than when you and I were. I mean, I don't know, Xbox, PlayStation, iPhones, Android phones, etc., etc. I don't even think I had the internet in my day. Never mind.
I mean, of course, early in our day, the internet didn't exist, did it? And I was talking to one of our younger team members at work a couple of days ago, and they think I'm joking when I say the internet didn't exist. If we hadn't sorted it out at school, and I wanted to go and see if a mate was playing, I had to go and walk to his house. And we didn't all live on the same estate. We might have lived in roughly the same area of town. There was no texting. There was no internet. There wasn't an internet. And I know the girl at work.
I remember. I don't know if you remember, but I remember. You being 4 years older, you were probably out and about by then. But I remember us getting our first landline. I remember the landline arriving in our house, and I remember Dad telling us that we weren't to use it because it was very expensive. It was there more for incoming calls than outgoing calls. Yeah,
I also remember it was a party line, so the next door neighbours had the same line, and so there would be times when you would pick the phone up, and next door neighbours were already talking, and you had to put the phone back down.
Yes, I do remember that.
I mean, again, I'm sure there's some people either laughing and nodding in agreement with us, or there are some people here shaking their heads thinking we're just making this up.
Yeah,
but it is untrue.
On the age. It depends on the age of the listener. Look, that's a great start. I'll got a couple of questions. We'll come back in a minute. We'll for those who know or don't know, but we also had another brother, and we'll come on to talk about him, and then some cricketers therapy, and then it won't all be doom and gloom. Let's have some funny moments, etc., as well. So we'll be back in a couple of seconds. You are listening to the podcast Bats, Balls and Banter. Please like, subscribe and share with your fellow enthusiasts. Hey, don't forget to leave a review, and your support keeps the banter going. Welcome back, and thanks, Al. We've talked about there about why cricket was chosen over football, and then obviously your balancing sports and mental health and your challenges and how you've overcome them, and some of the things that helped you get through those stages. And just before the break, we talked about having another brother. So we had a third sibling, losing our brother Paul in a tragic accident. It was life-changing for all of us. Of that, there's no two ways about. But how did it shape your approach to sport and life in general? And when I say that, we go back to the earlier questions about your mental health and how sport helped. I know personally how the camaraderie around the team that I was with at that particular time back in 1999, made a huge difference. But how did it shape your approach to sport and life in general, really?
Yeah, well, what an overwhelming experience that was, Kev, to be honest. I remember the night as though it was only yesterday, I have to say. Paul's on his way to Nottingham and was involved in a head-on car crash on the A614. And
he was off to see his girlfriend, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah. Yes, he was. And this was 5:30.
Yeah.
In the evening, and Mum had actually gone to the Majestic Theatre in Retford and was watching the show, and the police actually went to the theatre mid-show and obviously pulled her out of the theatre as such, and took her home, and then I got a call from Dad. And wow, yeah, quite an experience. And as obviously you will remember, myself and you went to identify Paul's body.
I do.
As Mum and Dad were too traumatised to do that.
And I think potentially we were, but it just had to be done. You know, there was
no,
I don't want to, or it just had to be done. It's just one of those things. You go into an autopilot, really. Again, you do.
You know, when I think back to that, I remember us both sat in the back of a police car going to Kings Mill, I think it was, at Mansfield. Yeah, and not a lot spoken. It's so surreal, so unbelievably surreal. You know, when it's a sudden death and there's no planning and no thinking that this is likely to happen. Yeah, there you are, and you know, enjoying whatever you're enjoying, and you know, I'd got a young daughter at that time, and just what, this doesn't happen to us. So it was, you know, there was obviously we were filled with grief, but I also think there was some confusion, anger, and really a sense of loss. Not in as much as a loss of this young lad's life as well, not just our brother or, you know, our parents' son, but so young. And it really brought home to me, really, not at the time, but thinking back, really proved how fragile life is, really.
Absolutely.
And, you know...
I think, you know, we are different characters just by human nature, not because of that event, just that's how we are. And I think people who know us would say you're a bit more planned, a bit more organised, a bit more non-risk taker.
Very much so, yeah.
Was I'm a bit more, let's live for now, let's see what tomorrow brings anyway, let's give it a go. But I think that escalated my view of that personality of mine, that let's do it tomorrow, who knows what tomorrow brings. I think this incident with Paul escalated in my head, that you just do not know what tomorrow brings. So I'm not going to wait for tomorrow. I'm not going to wait for next week. I'm not going to wait for 6 months' time. You know, and it is my downfall sometimes. You know, I don't always think things through. 9 times out of 10 it works out all right, but there is the odd time. Whereas your approach will have the same thing, even if you work it through. 9 times out of 10, you know, it'll work, but the odd one.
Definitely, I have a very measured approach to everything. It's a very much a what if, and what if this, then A this or B that, and it's quite debilitating, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if you've ever...
I would say that, you know, yes, you do that. It also can be debilitating not doing any of that and jumping in and then having to battle about shit. I never thought about that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever particularly just taken a moment to think, I wish I was Al, but there are times where I've thought, God, I wish I was Kev. I wish, you know, I've never left Retford, and like, you know, you've lived all over, you've had different jobs, you've been so different in the way you've approached life. I think to go back to the incident itself of Paul, then maybe I became more measured, which, you know, has really been, I do feel, to my detriment. However, I think what it did do, even subconsciously at the time, I did have some form of evaluation, really, and I guess in terms of sport, it did focus me somewhat to be more successful than I probably was shaping up to be. Now, let's say when you talk of success, I've been nothing more than a club cricketer. But I did feel that I should really, in a way, honour his memory by pushing on and trying to enjoy every opportunity offered. But all of this, for me, was tempered, really, with many bouts of very poor mental health. And to this day, it's still a real challenge.
Yeah, and I think what would be fair to say is that really cricket is, or was, or continues to be, some form of a therapy. So, you know, it provided an outlet really during tough times of something We loved doing. We were. I think you knock yourself about being a club cricketer. Yes, we both ultimately were club cricketers. But if we're to be realistic, we probably could have committed ourselves more and probably got more out of it, but we didn't. Definitely. And therefore, you can't live with regrets on that front. But no. I think that cricket as an outlet at that particular time, not only for me, but I'm sure that was a form of therapy for you also.
Oh, without a doubt. Again, it goes back to that, life's dealt a pretty poor hand on that subject. But, I'm going to play cricket with my mates at the weekend, and we're going to have such a good time. And in that moment in time, or those hours, I'm going to put everything else to one side. And believe me, I've been putting a lot to one side, week in, week out, year in, year out. And so I built some form of resilience by playing cricket and by being in that team environment. And yes, Sunday morning football and
talking of Sunday morning football, didn't you once, we could come on to it in a little while actually, but didn't you once tour Barbados?
Yes.
Shall we take a little 5-second break and then come back and talk about your tour to Barbados?
Certainly.
The tour that never was. Back in a couple of seconds. In my conversation with Alan, we covered such a wide range of deeply personal and insightful topics that there was simply too much content for just one episode. From his journey of choosing cricket over football to his candid reflections on mental health and the impact of our brother Paul's passing, every moment was packed with powerful stories and valuable lessons. And it's because of this we've decided to split our discussion into 2 parts, giving each aspect of Alan's journey the attention it deserves. So please join us again to listen to part 2 next week. This podcast series is sponsored by Cricket Finder, the world's fastest growing cricket networking platform, bringing clubs, teams and players together from all over the world. Use the code POD24 to receive your subscription discount at cricketfinder.com. So thank you all for tuning in to Bats, Balls and Banter. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Until next time, take care and keep the cricket spirit alive.